It's so nice to see a lot of people I know, but even nicer to see people I don't know. The way to get together with people in LA is to have a book event, because it's so hard to make plans with you guys. As Noelle said, Skylight is such a special place. And, people have weird life lists and bucket lists, but I've never done a reading at Skylight, and I've always wanted to do it. I've been to a bunch of events in LA, so really special. I was saying before that I have probably done in 9 books and almost 10 years of doing the project. I'm probably guessing it's been 100 bookstores, and there have been 98 independent bookstores and 2 corporate bookstores. And independent bookstores launched the first book, not quite what I was planning. They got behind it, and so important to me personally and important to this community. So thanks for having us, and it's great to check the box on Skylight. Finally, it took a hardcover book about immigration to get here.
That's right.
Yeah, no, just the times never worked out. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Six-Word Memoir project, how we landed at this wonderful point in the project, and we're going to do what we do at Six-Word Memoir events, which is what do you do when you have a book which is largely comprised of 6-word stories. Now this book actually is different. For the first time we have about 40 or 50 backstories, which is a new note, which I just couldn't help myself, had to do it. Although most of the 6 words in there demand a backstory, but some we had them in there. So we have the contributors in different cities, from Albuquerque to LA, New York, Columbus. We have them start with their 6 words, and then share relatively short backstories, because the good news is we have a lot of people who live in LA in the book, and a lot of people responded to, yes, 5 p.m. on Saturday in Los Feliz sounds pretty good to me, I'm in. So I appreciate all of you coming. And the good news is also you're invited to space out. You're invited to space out the whole time. We will not be offended, because you may be thinking about your own 6-word memoir. Because at the end of any event, whether it's in a 3rd grade classroom or a fancy conference in LA, or here, but especially here, we invite everyone at the end to share 6 words on their life, on their coming to America story, on the moment they're feeling. You'll see, it can take a lot of range of what a 6-word memoir is. And that's really fun, and it'll start slow, and you'll be shy, then it'll kick in, and it'll be fun. I've done this before. It's going to be fun, and if you're shy, what a great time to not be shy. It's only 6 words. So, those handsome men are me and my grandfather. And reporters have been asking me, well, Larry, how long have you been working on how long has the immigration book been in the works? The answer is 103 years. My grandfather came over from Russia in 1914 at the age of 4, like so many people who came to America from another part of the world, for a better life. In his case, his family was escaping a war, and they immigrated to Philadelphia, and they did what you do. His dad worked hard, his parents took care of their kids, they sent money back to Russia to bring more people over. The classic American dream story. My grandfather went on to eventually work his way through pharmacy school, and he stood behind a counter like this when finally he opened up his own pharmacy in South Jersey, and all day long, really often until the end, 7 days a week, he knew his community. He knew their prescriptions, their ailments, and he knew their stories. And hanging out with my grandfather at his pharmacy, and later the American dream continued from my grandparents. They rented a small place in Atlantic City, that's like the American Jewish dream, by the way. And I would go down there and work, like ice cream jobs and summer jobs with them, and I stayed with them. And I loved to walk down the boardwalk with Smitty, his name was Morris Smith, and everyone called him Smitty, because it was like walking down Sunset Boulevard with a cute baby or a dog, and we have some of those in the house tonight. Everyone wanted to talk to you. They wanted to talk to Smitty because he loved to hear their stories. And we all like stories. We knew this before Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook. But sometimes it's easy to tell a story, but it's harder to listen. And that's what I got from my grandfather, that act of listening. So, I was in magazines for years, worked at magazines you've heard of, like ESPN and Men's Journal, magazines that you may have heard of that are gone, like Mike Magazine, and I loved it, but the frustration was that it was hard to get in stories of regular people into mainstream magazines. It sort of wasn't done. The women's magazine, the unstated maxim was, we do stories of regular people when bad things happen to pretty people. Just the truth. It wasn't much easier in ESPN or anywhere I worked. But I did love it. But eventually, I took a leap. And in 2006, I started an online magazine, which is kind of like Medium.com. Do you know Medium.com? If you didn't have $500 million and the brain of the co-founder of Twitter. That's what I started. It was a storytelling site. People liked it. It was a terrible business. I can now say it failed, right? I mean, it took long. It took the ninth book to admit that. But it was good, but it just wasn't a business. But then I got a little bit lucky. I threw up another idea onto the wall of Smith Mag, inspired by another old man, Ernest Hemingway. And a lot of you probably know the legend of Hemingway. The legend was Ernest Hemingway was once challenged in a bar bet. You write a whole novel in just 6 words. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Might have happened, might not have, but we all love an origin story. And this is mine. And this is the story of the 6-Word Memoir Project. I challenged this pretty small community to give the Hemingway novel a personal twist. I called it the 6-Word Memoir, and I went home for Thanksgiving, and I told my family about it. My nephew, who was 10, said, I get it, and I had been talking for less time than this. I have one for Grandpa, memory loss, what was I thinking? And his little brother said, can't wear tie-dye every day, want to. And I was like, whoa. And the next day I had 3,000 emails with 6-word memoirs, because back then it was just send it to me, and at the end of the month, I'll pick a winner. Actually, we crowdsourced the winner, and I'll get that person an iPod, which was a good prize back then, for those who remember that, and that'll be it. But it really worked, and it resonated. And let me show you a few examples. So it turns out, the constraint of 6 words, of all the things I tried on smithmag.net, which was named after my grandfather Smitty, when I gave people a box, they filled it, because we're a lot of writers in this room, but everyone has to write at some point. And blank pages are really scary for people. Cue blank page. This is scary. Even for people who write for TV, and write movies, and write novels and memoirs, they're scary, and blank computer screens are the worst. But when that page is filled in 6 words, it's an icebreaker. And so people wrote with honesty and without apology, and they liked it. It was thoughtful and addicting. And I gotta just point out that Courtney Kemp, when she was an editorial assistant at Mademoiselle, R.I.P., Courtney, I knew her a little, and I don't know the million people who've submitted to the site by now, some of them. She wrote, let me get this right. Only black girl, fierce woman now. That is the way she defined her life, probably at 22 or 23. She said, I'm owning my life. I have agency. I'm the protagonist of my own story, which is something I talk to students all the time about, because they don't know they are. And Courtney, just got like a 5-something deal with Stars, and she created Power, and she made her story come true, And I love to talk about the story, especially in Hollywood. And then also, it also gets funny, Married by Elvis, divorced by Friday. People, can you tell a story in 6 words? Well, we have imagery, we have color, we have a narrative arc. The English interviewers love to challenge me. You can't tell a story in 6 words on the BBC, but you can. Identity is a really big part of the project, right. I mean, some people are hitting the mental like button. Telling your story and all its weirdness and wonderfulness and your family, and Dave Sorelli is one of my favorites. And you know what? When we started getting press, not just on the coast where the low-hanging literary fruit exists, but in places like Columbus, Ohio, where I now live, they did a piece in 2008 in the Columbus Dispatch, just unbeknownst to me, until later. We started getting not just wordplay, which I love, obviously, but just these deep stories. I mean, Tiffany happens to live in San Francisco. It's not the best example, but look at that story. And does it not tell the whole story of at least some of our lives? And we heard from people, we heard from NASCAR dads and soccer moms and people who knit, but like in the regular way, not the hipster way. And what we had, I realized soon, we had the populist storytelling project I always wanted to create, but until I offered a parameter, it just didn't stick. So that was 10 years ago, and this is our 9th book. And I'm not going to tell you it's a special book, because you're going to hear about why it is in a minute. For me, the books made it possible to do this dream. This is my life. I have a couple employees. Shauna, where are you? Shauna's somewhere. Shauna works with me. And we have a community person. We have a couple employees. Our first corporate partnership in 2006 was with an unknown company called Twitter. At the time, we each had 3 employees. They grew. We like the level we're at, but are they really happy? You know. So we like what we do. Very small conference calls. And so, and the commercial aspect really made it possible to keep doing what I love so much and what my team loves. But how 6 words became not just a tool for self-expression, but a tool for anything, to get the essence of anything. And the 3 important words in the 6-word memoir project are spark a story, essence, bring it down, and community, connect with people. Those are the words that make this project run. And I show you this slide, which is from a student. And when the first book came out, a lot of teachers just saw, we could teach this in the classroom, a way to break the ice or get the essence of every character in Catcher in the Rye, and anything you can think of. We have a whole blog to go to the schools, and it's wild. And so I did a TEDx talk a couple years ago, and it was 12 minutes, like every example had to be killer, right? Really did. And I'm like pouring over memoirs and all this stuff. I'm looking at Nava Krieger's, and I've had it around for a couple years. I think she just came out in a book of all illustrated memoirs just by students that we did a few years ago. And I was like, and I think there had just been something in the news, probably another police African-American shooting, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, I got it. So what Nava is saying is, well, bears are her number one fear, but maybe because she's 9, she has considered the perspective of the bear, which is humans are my number one fear. And it's like Democrats, Republicans, Arabs, Israelis, the police, and often, different communities. Maybe what Nava, in her brilliance of 8 years old, was saying was that if you know the bear, maybe the bear is just as scared of you. And if you ask the bear its story, maybe it's not so scary. And immigration is a topic that I wanted to address for years, really inspired by my grandfather Smitty. I always wanted to get back to that first question of who are you? The answer is often, where am I from? Who are my people from? What did I become, right? And immigration was always a good issue, and when for years I could not get a book deal on this one, the editors liked it, but then the sales would say, we can't sell this book. I was like, are you kidding me? I think immigration, the hot button issue is because it's this other that's somehow scary. But maybe in the 550 stories and the 10 or 12 year backstories till tonight, maybe when you know these stories, and I know preachers converted here, I know that. But if you know these stories, and if you buy books tonight, and you will, and I'll tell you why you will later, but you will, give it to someone who maybe wouldn't buy this themselves, Give it to someone, and this isn't like you're giving the Bill O'Reilly book to you're like Obama volunteer. This is just give a book of stories to someone, So let's, where's the video? This video is on, right? Yeah, you get it. So, I don't really need maybe I need the mic for the podcast, but, so, for me, an ideal book reading is when 2 years ago, The Best Advice in 6 Words came out. We did at another great indie bookstore, which need not be named because it wasn't this one, but it was a good one. And an ideal book reading is when a friend comes, brings his family, buys 10 books, and says, let's do a book together. And that friend is Steve Melnick. And he said after the reading, and we've always been talking, what can we do together? He said, well, we want to do a book with Fresh Off the Boat. And I said, definitely. In fact, immigration is a topic that I haven't been able to get going. But with a TV show, that always helps, right? And so I said, but couldn't just be the Taiwanese American experience. We'd have to do, generally. He's like, obviously, dude. It's just a way in. And Steve's very smart. And he's like, of course, we'll just use that in because Fresh Off the Boat, like 6 Words, uses pop culture and kind of a fun, sometimes playful way of looking at telling stories as a way to get to bigger issues. It's sneaky, right? It's why Graydon Carter puts celebrities on the cover of Vanity Fair, so you'll read the war story. But it's sneaky and it's effective. So, in a bookstore 2 years ago, we had a 10-minute conversation, and 1,000 memos, meetings, and conference calls later, we did exactly what we set out to do. And this video will show you a little bit about how we made the book and who's in it, and then we'll hear from some folks in the book.
call began on social media.
We're making a book.
It's called 6 Words Fresh Off the Boat.
Hundreds of personal stories about immigration
And identity.
Each told in just 6 words.
Then we paid visits to schools and small businesses, to English classes for recent immigrants, naturalization centers, and Ellis Island. And we encouraged daily encounters where people were asked these 6 words. And the answers came in from across America, across cultures, and across generations.
Go right. I'm telling you to stay. I don't mean that leaving's wrong. I just want you to know I think you're right. You're right where you belong.
We enlisted the voices of notable names in art and literature, entertainment, and sports.
You're right where you belong.
Millions of engagements, thousands of words, hundreds of stories. One unique and timely book. 6 words, fresh off the boat.
So, I just want to tell you, show you a couple more images from the book. I'll tell you about Sarah. Sarah, she was in the thing, in the video. A lot of faces in this room are in the video, like more than any event that I've done, so that's kind of going to be fun for all of us. Sarah came to America at age 13 from Syria with her grandma and mother, no guys, and escaped the war. And she knew no English. And she showed up to her high school in Columbus, Ohio, and she's like, how do these locker works? What is English? Who are these people? What am I reading in English class? You're reading the Odyssey. She's like, damn. She translated into Arabic. 6 months later, word for word, she was fluent in English, started winning poetry slams, got 11 full scholarships to colleges, waitlisted at Harvard. Really? Like, was there another Syrian teen poet winning poetry slams that got her spot? And is going on full scholarship to Denison. She's my buddy, and she has closed shows at very fancy venues in Columbus with adults because she's the best. Just a couple others. First memoir in the book. Just thought that was a nice note to start on. From migrant farm worker to NASA astronaut. You know, one of the reasons we tell stories and we have mentors is because when you see Jose and what he became, that becomes available to you if you're a kid. And that's why Fresh Off the Boat, to see faces that you don't always see on TV, are so important. At a almost entirely school full of very recent immigrants, of kids, in San Francisco, SF Mission, I was in a high school class, 30 kids, 12 countries, 6 languages, 1 heroic teacher. During our slam, as we'll do tonight, Doris came up, and her friends were like, just go up there. She was shy, she didn't want to share, but she did. She got up in front of a big room of classmates, and she said, my name is not Mamacita, okay? And she got applause. And we were talking about owning your stories. In that moment, and you probably figured one of the kids applauding had catcalled her, right? But she just took it back, and it was just such a powerful moment. And then this guy, pretty incredible journey. Then you're mayor. What a good piece of writing, you know? Love that guy, never met him, but that's a good story.
Typical, more than 6 words.
Well, if you're the mayor, we allow a few hyphens if you're in office. So I'm so excited to bring up our first storyteller. Forrest Wheeler, you know him as Emery Huang in Fresh Off the Boat. He'll share where you see his 6 words. He has, at the ripe old age of 13, been on the shows Community, New Girl, and Chasing Life. this probably is like the coolest thing I'm imagining for us, which is that I didn't know this because I'm a little older than you. You've appeared in the web series Mortal Kombat Legacy 2. Nice. You've been in movies, and when I was 13 I had a paper route, and Forrest is on a hit TV show, and we're so pleased to bring you up as our first storyteller.
Hi, I'm Forrest Wheeler, and my 6-word memoir is Hot Pot, Free to Be Me. And I chose this because it's my idea of the American dream, a hot pot. You can add, subtract, and craft your food or your life to anything that you want. So an example of this is I like acting, so I can add the flavor of acting into my life. And eventually, hopefully I can create something worthwhile and super fun in my life, and that's why I chose it, because it represents the American dream to me.
Thank you, Forrest. And you know, also I've pretty much met none of the backstory people tonight, one or two. It's just fun just to like meet them and hear what they have to say. Dana Bourbano is our next storyteller, and she is a Colombian immigrant, playwright, and teaching artist at the South Coast Repertory and Breath of Fire Latina Theater Ensemble.
Hi, everybody. So my 6 words are, Sesame Street's Olivia teaches me English. So we moved from Columbia to Cleveland, Ohio when I was 3 years old, and we spoke absolutely no English, none of us. My parents, myself, none of us. And I have no idea how my parents learned, but for me, they plopped me in front of Sesame Street. And I love the Muppets, just like every other kid, but there was something about this beautiful African-American woman with this beautiful face who seemed to be talking to me. Her name was Olivia, and I loved her, and she seemed so warm and so happy, which was unlike my mother, who was really very sad. And I just remember one day she opened the curtain and the world had been covered in gray, and she burst into tears because we'd never seen snow. So I did learn English, and I'm very, very glad that I had that experience with Olivia, but it became something where I had to subsume my Spanish, and it was only when I moved to Hollywood and became an actor that I realized that being bilingual was important and made me who I was, and that I didn't need to lose one to be the other. So, and just as a very quick little coda, I did a play a few years back, and I walked into the first read-through. You know, we all sit down and we do a table read, and I sat down next to a beautiful African-American woman, and it was Elena Reed Hall, who was my Olivia, and we worked together, and I finally got up the courage to tell her thank you for teaching me English.
Hollywood ending there. Thank you for that. And I have to just say that, you know, a real theme in the book is this duality, especially among students. 8 hours English, 5 hours Spanish, or parents, Indian at home, American at work. And it's interesting because the duality, sometimes it's celebrated, and especially I think for younger people, it's really, there's a tension there. But what I've heard in backstory events and in the book is that they embrace that tension and they don't run from it all, which I think is 2017 speaking, is the way we want to hear it. Our next storyteller is Exion Win. And when I read his, I can't remember if I asked you to submit a backstory or if you just submitted one. But sometimes when people, we didn't know we were going to do backstories, but people were just like, here's my 6 words and here's the backstory. And you're like, okay. And it kind of kept happening, you know? And when I read his backstory, I was like, you know, if this wasn't so, the TV show people are going to like this one. But it was, and that's not what we put it in. It worked on its own merit, but I sort of thought they would dig it. So come on up.
Thank you very much. Wow, it's a pleasure being up here. I'm going to read a passage from the book. I actually got a page in the book. I appreciate it.
You know, you earned it.
So my 6 words are, was a refugee, now a restaurateur. My parents were refugees from the Vietnam War. They survived hardships and experienced unimaginable things. My father was a South Vietnamese soldier, and he told me stories about how he survived getting shot He had many scars on his body. He also had a shot that came out from the back of his head, out of his mouth. Thankfully, he survived. I wouldn't have been born if he had passed away. My parents endured the boat trip from Malaysia and were eventually rescued and sent to the U.S. So basically, they didn't have any. All they had on them was their clothes on their body. And my mother had a necklace, and she sold it for $25. And guess what she spent it on? Pizza. She went to Pizza Hut. So they ended up working at a Chinese restaurant in Little Rock, Arkansas. And after working there for a couple of years, they started their own business. Started their own restaurant, and they grew their restaurant business from there. The fresh off the boat parallels my life as I grew up in working in restaurants, struggling to find my place at school from the late 80s to the 90s. And then after my parents retired, I joined the U.S. Navy. So I'm actually an active duty hospital corpsman in the U.S. Navy.
Stay fresh off the boat like that. Kathleen Chin, when I asked her for her bio, she sent me 3 words: actor, writer, storyteller. Come on up and tell us more.
Hi guys, how are you? My Chinese mom was born in the year of the dragon, which made her fierce, formidable, and usually right about everything. Of course she had a major influence on me, but it was my little grandma who really made me who I am. Resilience, strength, perseverance, courage. That's what I remember about my grandma. She was a 4'8" force of nature, a real character, and she had been to hell and back before she turned 30. Can you imagine what it would be like to witness your husband and your 2- and 5-year-old sons being killed in a bombing attack when the Japanese invaded Canton, China during World War II? Flee on foot to Hong Kong with your daughter after losing everything, with just what you could carry on your back. End up working as a servant in a wealthy family, with a wealthy family after being a wealthy person yourself with a staff of servants, because you have no job skills except knowing how to order people around. That's karmic payback. But you learn to cook and clean with the best of them because you have to survive. You let your daughter take off with a theatrical troupe to be educated because you can't afford to pay for schooling. You're separated from her for years, but miraculously reunited with her after the war ends. You see your daughter immigrate to the United States with her new husband, a polio victim with a crippled leg who owns a casino, the New China Club in Reno, Nevada. Immigrate eventually to the United States 7 years later and end up in Reno to help raise your grandchildren because their parents have to run a business. You are in a foreign country where you do not speak English, and there are cowboys and rednecks and a lot of white people, not many people of color, and very few Asians. But you adjust, adapting to the food and ways of America, learning your own form of Chinglish by watching TV soap operas. You even start to enjoy things in life, like learning how to gamble and the occasional cocktail. Her favorite was the old-fashioned. And sneaking off to the casinos while the kids are at school, returning in time to prepare dinner. You have seen the arc of technology, from electricity to indoor plumbing, to cars and air travel, to a man landing on the moon. Everyone has a washer and dryer, TV is a fact of life, a microwave is a necessity, and people connect with each other with a keyboard stroke or a smartphone. My grandmother taught me so many things: how to cook, clean, sew, gamble. Oh, actually, that was my dad. I was so lucky to have her living with us as we grew up. After my dad passed away, my mom and grandma relocated to the Bay Area. But my grandmother continued to be an independent spirit, living on her own in a senior housing apartment and taking the bus every day to pick up her groceries. She would also take off on trips with her new friends, new adventures like wine tasting in Napa Valley or shopping at the outlet malls. She was my inspiration, and I miss her so much. She finally passed at the age of 104. Whenever she talked about dying, she would say, "When your number's up, it's time to go. What are you going to do?" I went to visit her a week before she passed. She had stopped eating and drinking and was unresponsive. A dear friend of mine who helps transition people to the other side suggested I bring something to her that she loved, some sense memory, like a fragrance or a piece of music that she could take with her into her next life. So I made her an old-fashioned. Really good bourbon, and I muddled the fruit. I put it in a dropper bottle, and when I saw her, I made sure I had a big shot in there, and I put it in her mouth and I squeezed it. And sure enough, she opened her eyes and she said in Cantonese, "Wow, ho hang." That means, "Wow, how fragrant." Then she swallowed it, closed her eyes, and fell asleep with a little smile on her face. So I was so glad I was able to send her off with the memory of something she really enjoyed in this lifetime. So here's to you, Grandma. Have another old-fashioned. Cheers.
I feel pretty good that the old-fashioned is one of my main drinks, you know? 104, you buried the lead, 104, wow. Thank you for that. And I hope that somebody hands me a drink at the end. What a beautiful story. So, Tanzila Ahmed, aka Taz, we go with Taz, don't we? I found Taz of the fun way. You know, to get these stories, you put the word out. We did a lot of work, as you saw from the video, in classrooms, in immigration, with immigration organizations. But also, I just asked interesting people, who do you know that's interesting? And I ended up with Taz's email when I started listening to her podcast, and I'm like, this is fascinating, and she's funny, and I will note the book is not all it's funny. The book is funny, right? Read the book, funny. There's some funny stuff. It's not all intense. And so I think when I first emailed Taz, she's like, "Cool, love it, I'll get back to you." Then I've been known to be a little persistent. A couple follow-up emails. "Hey, come on, you're not getting out of this. You're going to do it." And she said, "Okay, Larry, actually, I've written like 20 or 25 six-word memoirs," and she sent them in. And I said, "We have to run them all, but how?" And I thought, well, we'll do an illustration. And through the wonders of Facebook, I posted on Facebook, "Hi, I'm looking for an illustration to illustrate a bunch of six-word memoirs in the vein of an artist I know and like called Lauren Redness." It's kind of the style she has. Some people know that. And I prefer to be female, and if possible from Bangladesh. 1 hour later, we had our artist, whose six-word memoir is, her name is Fahmida Azim, and her six words there with her signature are ingredients, sugar, spice, and righteous fury. And here to tell you, I don't know which story you're going to talk about. I included your first one up there, what you're going to say. But here to talk about some of her 20 memoirs is Taz Ahmed.
I'm just going to read them all. I sent you all of these just so you could pick your favorite. So just for the record, I wasn't trying to be an overachiever. I'll read them all. In mother's belly, I crossed borders. Anchor baby, fresh off the boat. Born here, but never feeling here. Daughter of Bengal third world refugee. Gold-paved streets are enticing traps. Au contraire, bacon isn't Muslim kryptonite. Inshallah, don't kick me off flights. My America, perpetually second-class citizen. Modern-day Western, cowboys versus immigrants. It's not a tan, it's melanin. India's partition was Nana's Muslim ban. Muscle memory reminds me to survive. I dream in poetry and rage. So, my backstory, let's see. I want to talk about what happened on January 27th this year, which is when the Muslim ban dropped and everyone went to the airport, right? So, thousands in LA, I think we had 7,000 people show up at LAX. People were showing up all across the country at various airports because it was atrocious. The Muslim ban 1.0 that dropped that day was atrocious. And I'm Muslim, right? I'm wearing the Muslim shirt today. Also, that's McCarthy made famous on SNL. And people were raging. It was right after Trump had been inaugurated into office. While this was going on, I was reflecting on my own family narratives around the Muslim ban. And I realized that, even though it was really shocking that this was happening here and now, there's a history behind this too. My grandfather had his own Muslim ban, and he was in Kolkata actually, which is now part of India. And in 1947, that was the year that partition happened, and he was in college. He was 21 years old in college, and he was in Kolkata. And back then, they had thought that Kolkata would remain with the rest of Bengal, which now became Bangladesh. They thought the border was going to be cut there, and he didn't think anything was going to happen. But then, when the borders were defined in 1947, he was on the wrong side of the border. And he still was in engineering school. He had 2 more years to go. So he continued his education. And it's like the last semester. And so basically from 1947 to 1949, he's under house arrest for being Muslim and in India when partition's happening. And he's basically only allowed to do schooling. All the other Muslim Bangladeshis who are in the school, engineering school with him, can't really move about. They're under watch, and they decided that they needed to escape. So their plan on escaping from India to Bangladesh was when Holi was happening. So I don't know if you know about the Hindu festival of Holi. This is when there's everyone's throwing colors all over the place, and it's very festive. And he said that under the cover of Holi, they escaped, basically. They pretended like they were also out celebrating. He put everything he could into his backpack, made it look like he wasn't escaping. And I'm not sure how he crossed. They had a meeting point on the other side of the city, so they had to cross by boat because they were cut off by the Ganges. There was a bridge. People took rickshaws and taxis and boats. These 17 men in the engineering school, they took all these different means to get to this meeting point. They hid out at the meeting point, and they got smuggled basically on a plane to go to Dhaka. So for that period of time, they were, for those, I believe it was like 3 days, people had no idea where they were, and they were bound in Dhaka. But that's how he was able to escape, with everything on his back. And I am reflecting on this story because of what's happening in America now. Now we have Muslim ban 1.0 has turned into Muslim ban 3.0, that this narrative could be very real for myself and for people like me. I've been doing a lot of work with the Japanese American community, which is where a lot of these pieces came up. I visited Manzanar. We just did a campaign at my day job, 18 Million Rising, on Tula Lake, preserving Tula Lake. And we went to the Japanese internment camp in Oahu last month. And I feel very strongly that what happened with the Japanese American narrative is very much tied to Muslim American narrative. And I'm going to leave you all on that Muslim ban 3.0 is supposed to be implemented next week on October 18th. The Supreme Court was supposed to hear it. They pushed back on hearing it. They're going to move forward on this new, terrible, Islamophobic legislation. So there's a lot of events going on. If you want to participate, check out nomuslimbanever.com. You can go there. We're doing a bunch of events. At 18 Million Rising, we'll be doing a poem a day by various Asian American poets. But there's also other ways you can participate. There's going to be, I think, a rally in LA too on the 15th. So I'm going to leave with y'all with that advocacy thing to do. If you're inspired by this book, you should be inspired to participate in this, because we want to welcome all kinds of people to come here.
Thank you, Tess. Actually, we're going to be hearing a little bit more about Tula Lake very soon, actually. And as Disney and Fox will remind us, this is not a political book, and yet And yet, this book was in the works, and we decided to make it and had a deal in sometime in 2016, and then on November 8th, 2016, Trump was elected, and suddenly a timeless topic became not only timely but vital. So while it's not a political book, right, stories do change hearts and minds. And so I do think that some of the things Taz was talking about are right. Why I wanted to do it, even though the word Trump doesn't appear in this book intentionally. Speaking of political, I don't know if she made it or not, but is Julia Chavez Rodriguez? Did she make it? Okay, she was maybe. Well, here's the good news. Cesar Chavez's granddaughter's in our book, and she runs state operations for Kamala Harris. So I'm thinking like as president in 8 to 12 years, maybe sooner. So that's exciting. So let's just take in her 6 words. And I spoke at a union conference a few weeks ago in Portland, and the cheer when I showed this one was fun. And speaking of Tule Lake, Kuja Nakata is our next storyteller, and he will pick up, I think, right where Taz left off. Thank you.
Wow, that's great timing because I'm going to talk about Tule Lake, and I do think the parallels are really close. And part of my history, which Larry didn't have, is I grew up a grape picker. So I belonged to the union, and that's where I spent a lot of my youth making money, to go to college. So my 6 words were born in Tule Lake. Google it. So where's Tule Lake? What is it? So if you're not aware that Tule Lake prisoner of war camp was one of the largest of the 10 camps to incarcerate Japanese Americans during World War II, you're not alone. I didn't know anything about it until I was well in my 20s when I went on the first pilgrimage to Tule Lake. You see, it was taboo to talk about the camp experience, is what I know, in my family and in a lot of Japanese American families. And so when my dad first heard that I was going, he actually got furious with me and wouldn't talk to me about it, even though I wanted to know, what barracks they were in and what cell and all those things. And slowly he came around. But what he said to me was, forget about the past. The past, what's done is done, focus on the future. So it's not surprising that my childhood motto was, don't cry about spilled milk. And so that's always been in the back of my mind as I deal with adversary, things like that. Originally, Tule Lake was called a relocation camp. The rationale was that the government was relocating us for our own safety. Make no mistake, Tule Lake was a prisoner of war camp. I've seen the barracks, I've seen the barbed wire. It's kind of also interesting that there was German and Italian prisoner of war prisoners in Tule Lake at the same time. Tule Lake was also where they segregated what they called disloyal no-nos. And what happened in 1943 was every Japanese American who was in the camp had to fill out this questionnaire, and there's 2 questions on it. And one was, would you serve in the armed forces in active duty? And the other one was around, would you be a loyal citizen? And my dad, particularly, probably my mother went along because she signed it also. But at that point, one of the few times when we talked about the camp experience, he said, being treated like a farm animal, being herded around with firearms, he said, I was not about to die and leave my family in the camp and go to war. And so he answered no, no. And so all the no people got sent to Tule Lake. And after the war, we were supposed to be deported. That's what happens when you get classified as a disloyal American. But he got TB. My dad got TB, which meant that we didn't go, fortunately. So that's why I have a Japanese first name, Koji. So there's Koji Keiko, who's my sister. And then after he found out that, my family found out that they weren't going to be deported, there is Bill, Susie, and Gary. Our family experience of the camp experience was actually very fortunate. All 5 kids graduated from college. We've all gone on and had really good careers. Half of us are retired. But it wasn't the case for a lot of my relatives. And family friends. And also, unfortunately, the political mentality that caused our camp experience keeps popping its ugly head up periodically against other groups. And I have particularly down here, the Muslim registry, and just the whole ban on Muslims and things like that. It popped up also during the black riots as a place that they might put blacks. So that mentality is always there. So I'm always cognizant of that, even though our family, took that experience, didn't cry over spilt milk, and made something out of it. That's more the exception than the reality. Let me end by thanking Larry and also Stephen and my daughter for encouraging me to participate in this project. It's been a really life-changing experience for me. For the first time in my life, I felt free and moved to share my Tule Lake experience. Okay, I only did that before. I was a very active Asian American, so I did it within my own community. But to actually come speak to this, I'm sharing with my friends. And telling that story, telling my stories, opened me up to hear other immigration stories of my friends. This Wednesday, I flew up to San Francisco to visit a kind of an annual meeting of about 6 or 7 of my old fraternity brothers, and I sat next to Ron Rubenstein. And in the 10 minutes that we shared our immigration stories, I learned more about Ron and came away feeling more deeply connected with him than 50 years of casual relationship. Also, it turned out that Ron and I were in the same fraternity, but he, his fellow Jewish brothers, and the fellow brothers of color would always have to hide when National showed up every year, and we would have our own private dinner, and I can't remember what the little club was called. So Ron has always been special to me, but we've never shared our immigration stories, and basically the immigration story is really the story of who we are, just based on our history. The other thing I've learned in sharing my story is that stories is what brings us together instead of dividing us. Sharing my story, hearing the story of others, I end up feeling a stronger sense of love and sense of shared humanity as human beings occupying this one earth. So thank you, Larry.
Thank you for that. Especially when talking to students, and you don't want to be on a soapbox, but that simple question of asking people their story, like nobody doesn't want to tell it, And we get in lines, supermarkets and Ubers and whatever, and it's so easy to stare at your phone. I do it too, right? When you put down the phone and you ask that person, because you got time to kill, right? Like, what's your story? Where did you come from? Whether they look like they came from the Mayflower or they escaped a war a week ago, they want to talk. And especially when kids say, well, I don't know, when we go around the room in classrooms, they say, well, I don't really know my family story. I'm like, I really didn't either. I was in my 20s when I really learned my grandfather's story. Truthfully, big epic fail for a journalist. And so I tell them that because I'm no different than them. So sometimes their story is, don't really need to learn my family's story, right? So that simple question of asking, there's nothing more interesting than people. There's nothing in this bookstore or in Los Angeles more interesting than people. Even Blade Runner in 3D, which was actually pretty good. So Amy Nealon, did you make it, Amy? Oh, good. Amy Nealon is very special to me, though we've never met, because she is an active member of the Six-Word Memoirs community, which is just where it all starts. It's updated every day. Hundreds come in every day. We put the Six-Word Memoir of the day across social media. We curate it. And do you know that you're November's Memoirs for the Month, don't you? And she's November's Memoirs for the Month. She has written, as of yesterday, 764 six-word memoirs. But I gotta tell you, Amy, that's nothing, right? Some people have done 5,000 and 10,000 six-word memoirs. But one of the reasons we like Amy's is that most of hers are really good. So Amy, you want to come on up.
Hi, how are you? My six-word contribution was buried his accent, buried his identity, which is actually about my husband, who, as a matter of fact, immigrated from Ireland this month 37 years ago. And his story of immigration wasn't a happy one, and he had to do a couple of things to make it through the first couple of years. Just a quick backstory. He had a pretty good childhood, I'd say. Pretty idyllic, living in a coastal village just north of Dublin. His dad was a barrister and had a very strong sense of right and wrong. And if you're familiar with the Irish tune Dirty Old Town, talked about Dublin, not just the city itself, but the politicians of the day. Tony's dad felt it was a good idea to try and take some of those politicians to court. Their favorite accessory was a brown envelope stuffed with cash, and it didn't go over very well. So the bomb threats started coming into his businesses. People were showing up at his house in the middle of the night with masks on and trying to scare him, and it worked. So they came to California to try and start over. The thing with Tony is his parents kind of protected him from all of this. He was 11 years old at the time, didn't really know what was going on. It wasn't uncommon for his family to come over to America. He had aunties over here to go to Disneyland, and the last time when he immigrated over here, he thought he was going to Disneyland. So, a bit of a shock. So, about a month later, he started in 6th grade, and we were talking about the call on 6 words about, what's your immigrant story? And I was talking to Tony, and he told a story, a couple of them. And the first one was his first day of school in the 6th grade, and his teacher asked him to come up to the chalkboard and work out a long division problem, which wasn't a problem. He had no problem doing that. So walked up, thought, I'm going to nail this, I'm going to impress the teacher, maybe make some friends. He gets up, 10,000 divided by 5, he's up there, X, 2, not. Kid in the back, what does not mean? Teacher stops him. Tony, it's not, it's 0. Humiliation galore. He sits down, doesn't talk much for the rest of the day. A couple days later, he's out on the playground, sitting at a table eating lunch by himself. And this tree trunk of a kid comes up to him, looks down at him. He's like, why don't you go back to Iran where you belong? Tony looks up and he's like, well, I'm from Ireland, and it's Iran, Iran. And if he was up here telling the story, he would follow that up by saying, to which Iran. There's that duality that Larry mentioned, sort of subtle in Tony's case. He would come home and he would be able to beat. Outside he'd try and kill the accent, try and, kind of blend in and not stick out as much. But when he got home, the cups of tea were waiting, his parents were there, it was a bit of home, and it was a bit of comfort. Years later, when we got together, moving into his home, he has this kitchen table that I hate. And if you've ever seen When Harry Met Sally, it always reminded me of the wagon wheel coffee table. I always think of it as the wagon wheel kitchen table. And, I've tried so many times, get rid of this table, let's get something different. And he always says no. And finally, one day, he finally explained to me that this is the table that I had in my family's home in America, where the cups of tea were had and where I could still be myself. And I'm sorry for the insensitivity. And I just want to tell you, Tony, I will never ask you to get rid of that wagon wheel kitchen table. Thank you.
Married well, Tony. Good job. Speaking of resourceful, our next storyteller is James Glover, who is a supervising producer at CBS. And probably the part he most wants me to say is that he's the president of the Mulligan Project, which is a nonprofit for disabled children in Vietnam. Thank you, James.
Yeah, so my 6 words is inspired by my mother. Land of opportunity, if you're resourceful. My mom came over here a few years before I was born with my American father, and then moved to South Carolina. And my father passed when I was 5, so she was in a foreign land with 3 young children. Doesn't know anyone, barely knows the language. and she works at a sewing factory, and all the money's going to daycare. So she's like, there's an elementary school across the street with a bunch of kids, so she opened a daycare at home, so that way she could watch us and make money. And throughout this whole process, she's doing things like making our clothes, tearing paper towels in half so we, get double use out of it, and cutting coupons. And as the years goes on, that's the way that she's able to save money, provide for us, and she starts investing. And after 60 plus years of working, because she started working when she was 3 years old, she was able to retire this past April. And she always says to me, here in America, like, anybody can have money, you just have to be smart and resourceful. And like I said, this past April she finally retired, but she still tears those paper towels in half, and still cuts the coupons, and so do I.
And I mean, what's so much of the book, you hear that, and I'm thinking about the plastic bags my grandmother saved. It's a good bag, Larry, because she had 2 shirts during the Depression. She washed one and she wore one, so there's so much of that in the book. So speaking of Land of Opportunity, Shane Wayne, where are you? I saw you a minute ago. You're back in the green room. He is a comedian, and he helps make Fresh Off the Boat funny.
Thank you. What's up, guys? I wrote Warning, Land of Opportunity includes stand-up because I'm a stand-up. My parents are immigrants. My parents are from Taiwan. I was born in Taiwan. My parents were pretty poor when they were kids. And we kind of make a joke of this on our show, but they lived that life where basically eating any kind of protein or meat was a big treat, and you don't really keep track of your birthday because there was no point to doing so. But you knew it might be your birthday if you woke up and you got like an egg for breakfast. That was a real big deal. That's how my parents grew up, and things got better and better. But basically, they immigrated to the U.S. and I've been doing stand-up for like 15 plus years, and it took me a while to just think about the fact that I don't think they knew at the time when they immigrated here for a better future for the children that there was going to be a risk that the children or their son would go into stand-up comedy. And I'm grateful that they're very supportive. But if they had known this was going to be the outcome, I don't know if they would have done it, I'm gonna just share a quick story about like my first uncle was basically like my dad's oldest brother. My dad's the youngest of 8. My mom was the oldest of 4. But my dad's oldest brother was my dad grew up on a farm. And you had 2 options: either you work your butt off on the farm, or you try to do well in school. And my first uncle was the one that like excelled in school, and eventually started his own business and pulled a family out of the farm. But I'm gonna just tell a quick story about how this is something he used to share with us. He had to leave, the village or whatever to go to high school, and he had to take a train really far at the age of 13 to figure out how to get more education. And to pay for high school, he had the family gave him a bag of rice. And when he got to the office to pay for his tuition, they were like, "This rice is not good enough, so we can't take it." And so he was by himself, far from home, and he was just like crying, trying to figure out how to pay for his tuition. And these older students came and basically asked him what was going on. They're like, "Let's just combine our rice, dilute it so it's equally bad, equally less bad, and then we'll pay for your tuition as well." So that's how he got into high school. And then he did really well for himself, got the whole family out of the farm life, and got to the point where, a bunch of them immigrated over here to the U.S. My first uncle ended up paying for tuition for a lot of me and one of my cousins' college tuitions. And I don't know if I'm gonna be generous or rich enough to do that for my niece and nephews, but I'm just proud of the fact that, like, as a stand-up, as a writer on this TV show, I get to help contribute to this new kind of America where, like, my nephew and nieces can, like, sit down on a Tuesday or whatever with their parents and their grandparents and watch network TV and see faces that look like them and their family. Thank you.
You know, I have thinking about my own grandfather, I have this kind of rule around events, no matter what the setting. It starts with my grandfather and I on the boardwalk. It ends with the Six-Word Slam, which is coming pretty soon, a few more storytellers. But it's like, they work so hard, so maybe, just maybe, their grandson could create a user-generated content online magazine. I don't know exactly. I don't know, and he died before I started it. But it is like, it's just the greatest privilege to be able to sort of be artistic, right, and do something and be like stand-up, right? And what silly thing will your grandchildren do, you know? Although if you don't buy a lot of books tonight, the dream will end with me. And I do want to make the book pitch, because I know some people may have to go, but I hope you don't, because the next few stories are dynamite, which is this. We are sitting here in Skylight Books. Indie bookstores actually have been doing great in the last few years. Not all of them, but the kinds that are really bedrocks of the community and stay open often late to do things like this. And so you let's get a prop here. So I hope that today you walk out here with a book, any book. This one's a good choice for tonight. And if you buy a bunch, like people do, they buy 5 and 10 and they throw them in drawers. And then when they need a gift for a teacher, right, or that cousins, or Secret Santa, or grandparents and grandchildren read stories together and they talk about them. It's so cool. And when you have that drawer of Six-Word memoir books, especially this timely one here, you'll be like, oh man, I'm going to a party. Instead of getting that like $10 bottle of wine that you pretend costs $20, you grab this, and now you're a conversation starter. And then you'll say a little prayer. You'll say, thank you, Larry. Thank you for that pitch, because now I have this great little thing for the host. So I told Skylight you'd buy a lot of books, so I do hope you buy them and we sell out tonight, but I'm mostly glad you're here. And I'm also glad that Laksu, where did you go? I lost everybody. There you are. Come on up. Laksu is a writer and memoirist who wrote the award-winning memoir, I Love Yous Are for White People. And I do love you, man. And he was not, I don't know if you were one of the first backstories to come in, but this book is a puzzle. It's like Latin. You're trying to make all the words fit. And I just knew that of all the backstories in the book, his would be the first one in the book. So it's very special to me, and I'm so glad you're here tonight.
Thank you, Larry. Larry. First of all, thanks to Larry and Shauna. I got an email from Shauna actually 3 weeks ago, Shauna. It's a lot. We need 6 words. I'm like, what's Larry up to these days? And a book on immigration. I'm like, yes, I need to be in this book because my name is Laksu and I am an immigrant. I was born in Vietnam. Immigrated to, we escaped actually from Vietnam and ended up in Hong Kong by boat. And then from Hong Kong, we were sponsored by a Buddhist organization in Los Angeles and sponsored our whole family. And of all places Uncle Sam can place a refugee family into, he chose Hollywood, California. All right, this is the 80s. I got to America in 1979, and the 80s with the, Reagan was running the country at that time. And crack cocaine was very prominent around that time. And we lived on Sunset and Kingsley. So in due time, I was able to befriend a lot of the prostitutes that was walking on my street. Immigration, I haven't thought much about it until I start writing my first book, I Love Visa for White People. And, you know, growing up, I was always ashamed to be an immigrant because I was treated as the other, quote unquote. And, you know, looking back, without my father's guidance, and me being able to easily assimilate and adapt was very helpful for me because it was really, really rough. Just imagine, you know, being just thrown into the country where you don't know the culture, the language, the way people do things, say things. It was just a new place, and we had to figure all that out. And I gotta give it up to the American government too, because without the government assistance, we wouldn't be able to have made it through. So, you know, I take that with pride because now I don't mind paying taxes because I know in the 80s some of that taxes were used to support families like us. And one more thing before I read my backstory is that I know what it's like to be an immigrant, and our communities reaching out and helping us and embracing us and getting our feet wet. Now that I've quote unquote made it, I think it is also my responsibility now to turn around and give some of that assistance back to the new immigrants that are coming over, and that's that. All right. So the title of my 6th word is First Things First, Find a Bicycle. Our family immigrated to Hollywood, California in 1978 as Vietnamese refugees. We left everything behind. My parents' wedding rings were the only valuables to make it out with us. My father knew we could adapt to a new life in America with what little we had. With hard work, the possibilities are endless. But first things first, he needed a bicycle to get around until he learned enough English to pass the driver's license test. Before enrolling my sister and me in school, my father searched local dumpsters looking for enough bicycle parts to build a complete bike. Within weeks, he found what he needed, even inner tubes that he patched and reused. For a few years, that red 10-speed bicycle was his prized possession. While other refugees did what they could to get their feet wet in America, my father was already getting his bicycle tires wet, pedaling to and from work every day, rain or shine. When the sun was out, I rode with him. He placed me on the bicycle frame in front of him and took me around on errands. We went to the liquor store to get cigarettes or pay our utilities bill, and if I was lucky, to the grocery store. One time on his way home from work, he decided to explore Los Angeles on a bike. He got lost. He didn't read or speak English. He couldn't find his regular route back home, a route that he'd been taking repeatedly for a year. He left work at 6 p.m. and didn't get home until the next morning at 9 a.m. His explanation to my mother: every street and every building in downtown LA looked the same. I thought I could remember the landmarks instead of the street names, but after a few miles, all the buildings began to look the same too. After a few years of saving, my father bought his first American car, a red 1976 Chevrolet Chevette. Though he passed the driver's license test and could drive around, he didn't. The red car was covered with cloth to protect the paint from the blazing Southern California sun. It was too expensive and beloved to take out regularly. Instead, he continued to ride his bicycle everywhere until it was time to teach me how to ride. His red 10-speed soon became mine. Like my father, I learned the ins and outs of Los Angeles streets by getting lost many times. There was something about riding around LA that made me fall in love with America. The most important thing that I learned on these rides is that despite all the different people and culture in Los Angeles, we had one promising thing in common. We were all trying to chase the American dream, one block at a time.
We have two more stories, and our next storyteller, Richard Johnson, is Richard is his third book of six-word memoirs you've been in. You've been in 6 Words on Work and The Best Advice in 6 Words, and you've been in a book about 6-word sentences, which I'm not sure I approve of, but nonetheless, that sounds pretty good. And that's okay. Come on up, Richard.
As you may have guessed, this is not my story. This has to do with, started back in the mid-1920s. My grandparents came over from Bulgaria on my mom's side, and their name was Tudorov. And when my grandfather came first with my grandmother's father, they came in through Canada, and they worked there for a few years. And then they tried to cross the border into America. And when they came over the border, the guard wouldn't spell the family name. And for the longest period of time, I thought, because my mother's maiden name was Johnson, and my grandfather's first name was Johnny, that's how we got the Johnson, because my mother was a Johnson who married a Johnson. Ended up that I found out literally about a year ago that in reality my grandfather chose that name as opposed to was being given by the guard, which is what I thought originally. But they still wouldn't take the spelling of the family name. So it still worked out. That's it.
Thank you, Richard. Our final storyteller, you know him from that ABC show you may have heard of called Fresh Off the Boat, Hudson Yang. He's been, first of all, he's been in like 70 episodes of a TV show at the age of, he's not even 14 yet, that's coming soon. It was really he kind of walked on, he'll tell you, he kind of walked on the audition and just took it. And, but beyond all that, beyond all he's accomplished at 13, he's been showing up, coming to bookstores, telling his stories, and it means a lot to me, but it means a lot to other kids and other people. So once again, I'm so thrilled to have my buddy Hudson Yang be our final storyteller. He has graduated to get his own 6-word memoir to me, and I'll tell you what mine means in a minute.
So my 6-word memoir is My Family's Why I Can Fly. Basically, this is because my family has worked so hard to help me get where I am. My mom working to come over to America and also to kind of put herself through college. She's the first person in her family to go to college. She paid for it by picking up bottle scraps and such. And then my dad, now he just drops everything, anything he's doing just to help me, no matter what I want to do. And when I first told him I wanted to be an actor, it was like while I was watching TV. He was like, Hudson, it's a really hard business, but I will support you. And he did. And the first thing he did was talk to his friends all over and got me an audition. And like all the stuff that he's gone through, all those times that I've got mad at him and the times he forgave me and all the times that he's basically pushed me to the edge and beyond is just reason why I chose these 6 words. And it's pretty short, but thank you.
Thank you, Hudson. About my tea, I celebrate each new book with a 6-word memoir tea. And for the first time, I've not put my own words on the book. When the book on advice and parenting came out, I wrote So Much Crying, The Baby Too, which I wrote when my son was 3 months old on a t-shirt. And guys in Brooklyn are like, I feel you, bro, And we would talk, though. It's a conversation starter. It's not meant to be an advertisement, though we do have a little logo on the back. But when I was working on the book, My son, who is 6, really he's 6, he'll be 7 eventually, but he is 6 now, he said, oh, I think I have one about the immigration experience. I'm like, oh, do you? And so he, since he grew up in Brooklyn, he said, centimeter by centimeter, foot by foot. Isn't that kind of what it must be like to come to America? I'm like, I think it is. And I don't know if he got lucky or if he's a 6-word savant, but I wear these words proudly for him. And now we know a 6-year-old can do this. How about you guys? Some of you have been thinking about your 6-word memoirs, and before we hear from you, I want to just, we're not going to do more backstories, but a couple of people in the book who didn't share backstories, I wanted to start with them, their 6 words. Shauna?
Mine was wanting to give Mom my birthright.
And you can hear the backstory afterwards. It's a great story. Are the Koch sisters here?
They're coming back.
They're coming back. We'll hear from them. They're the cutest 2 people in the room. You'll know them. What about Robert? Will you share yours? Robert, will you share yours?
Grandma made her own gifts.
And there's a really great picture in the book on page 187. Want to say anything more? Or are you good?
No, you don't see the back side. So the front side is put your fingers through a piece of plywood that she's painted Norwegian calculator on. And it's numbered 1 through 5. You turn it over, and it's numbered 1 through 10. And it really was her sense of humor.
The Norwegians, you know? We learn a little bit more about our world, don't we? Right? Is Joaquin Brown here? You are? Oh, awesome. So Joaquin, I should have your page marked, but share your 6 words, and there's a beautiful photo of your family on page 205.
It's actually my brother's quote.
That's okay, you can take it, he's not here.
But it's our grandfather did so we could.
Yeah, just a universal feeling that we heard. And there's a photo of like 10 kids in the photo of the family, which is fun. Who is just bursting with 6 words at the seams? Want to share one? Just stand up and say it. Lisa Rosen. Will you stand up?
Daughter of refugees, still fighting Nazis.
Who else? Just raise your hand and share 6. Oh, we're not going to end like this.
African descendants of displaced African people.
Thank you.
I got a voice. I'm good.
Okay, good.
Chicano, mestizo, still seen as immigrant.
Thank you. Hey, I saw Hudson's dad, Jeff, somewhere. Will you share yours, Jeff? There you are. Well, do it tonight.
Sure. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Yang.
Hello. I guess I'm the one who pushes Hudson to the edge and beyond. Learning English hard. Learning English easy. Learning American hard.
You have a couple more? Couple more? Steve.
Mine, Grandma's Sunday greeting got to use of Wichita.
Translation?
Which is Yiddish for Dear Lord with a sweet boy.
Thank you, Steve. Steve from Fox, who really helped make this book happen. Thank you, Steve. Anybody else? A couple more? You're bursting with 6. Some of you got them in your head. You're being shy. There's no reason for that. We're in a bookstore, by God. It's a very friendly place. One more. Here we go. Oh, yeah.
All right, first of all, again, welcome to the store. My 6 words are support indie books, support immigrant voices.
Buy the book. On that note, I would ask all the backstory people, contributors to the book, to come up for a group photo. I want to thank you. There's a lot to do on an early evening on a Saturday in LA, so I've been told. You chose to come here. You chose to support stories in indie bookstores, and we really can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.